Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am really delighted to introduce today's guest, Jesse Janelle. Jesse is the founder and CEO of Gemini Leadership and the creator of the Soul Session Method. She is an ICF certified transformational coach, and her TEDx talk on the power of self-trust is in the top 2% most viewed talks of all time. Jesse helps soul-searching professionals access the wisdom within them and unlock the power of their intuition to make better decisions faster. Jesse's career began as an intern at Harvard Medical School's Institute of Coaching during its founding years, where she first got immersed in the world of evidence-based coaching research. As her experience and expertise grew, she began consulting with and coaching leaders from top organizations such as McKinsey & Company, Mass General Hospital, the Walt Disney Company, and Amazon, among others. In 2022, she was selected for the inaugural cohort of Forefront, powered by Marshall Goldsmith and the 100 Coaches, for her impact on the field of leadership development. Please join me in welcoming Jesse Janelle. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. So, Jesse, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning and talk about those formative years and who the younger Jesse was and how those early years may or may not have informed where you are today. So take us back there.
Absolutely. I'll take you back to 11-year-old Jesse.
Yeah.
So I was in 6th grade. We say that's sort of when my both personal and professional development journey began. I didn't realize it till I was much older, but
Sure.
I think that's when it began. I used to experience a lot of anxiety, particularly when I was at school. I hung out in the nurse's office a lot for that reason. I was always down there. But I didn't have the name for what it was at the time. I just knew that I felt panicked a lot and I didn't know what that meant. One day I was down at the nurse's office, having a really bad panic attack. I was brought into the back room while she went to get the guidance counselor who sometimes would come in to help. This time, I must have been particularly anxious because the guidance counselor grabbed me by the shoulders, shook me, and told me to stop it right now and yelled in my face as an 11-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
So that's the moment that I go back to as when I feel as though I became disassociated from my body. So my thoughts became separated from my felt sense, my ability to know what was going on in my body, and later what I understood to be my sense of self-trust.
Wow.
So over time, what that looked like in my formative years, so going into high school and going into college, was somebody who was incredibly high performing. So I got straight A's, I went to a great school, and I intellectualized the struggles that I was having because I couldn't connect with my body. So I studied psychology. I studied meditation. I took a more academic or intellectual view of those things and went deep in those areas. And it wasn't until actually I graduated college until I felt like I actually started to be able to connect with those things in a felt way and get back in touch with who I really was.
It's so interesting how you, in some kind of organic or natural way, found a way to move through that with a a very intellectual kind of set of, I guess, coping mechanisms, you could say.
Yes. Yeah. I would definitely say it was a way to cope.
Yeah.
For anyone who's ever, done a yoga class or tried to meditate, so often it begins with the instructor saying something like, focus on your breath. Now connect with your body and focus on your breath.
Yeah.
And whenever I was in a position where I was asked to do that, I would immediately get anxious, get scared. My body would fight back because this idea that I could settle out of my head, I could get out of my thoughts and out of the intellectualization of things and get into my body was still way too foreign and way too scary for me to be able to do.
Did you have any sense of where that was coming from or why you were experiencing that? Or did you even question why you were experiencing that?
That's a really great question. So that experience that I described from 11-year-old Jesse when I was in 6th grade in the nurse's office,
Yeah.
I had disassociated from that experience for more than a decade. So when I graduated college and I was about 21 years old, I did a lot of journaling. And it was through a self-coaching practice using journaling that I remembered it. And then everything clicked for me of, oh, this is why it's so scary to be in my body. This is why breathing exercises cause this for me. And once I sort of understood the connections, then I could start to try to heal that in a way that made sense.
So this really all occurred to you just by your own, just resurfacing for you all those years later. Wow.
Yes, it was through, I use journaling as a self-coaching practice. And I know we'll talk later about what I do right now.
Sure.
But it's all part of this journey of why I'm so passionate about self-coaching in particular. And that's what helped me, remember and connect the dots of what had happened previously and how that affected me today.
Wow. So that happened in college, and you were taking yoga in college too?
Back when I was in 6th grade and this happened to me, I became afraid to tell adults whenever I was anxious. So I developed my own coping mechanisms, again, intellectualized. I happened upon my older brother's AP psychology book, which to me was divine intervention, but happened upon his AP psychology book, started reading it. And as an 11-year-old realized, oh, I have an anxiety disorder. Why didn't anybody just tell me that? And started researching ways to deal with that. So I asked my mom for a yoga DVD. I started going to yoga classes.
At 11?
At 11.
Oh my goodness.
Not telling her why, just, hey, I want a yoga DVD. I started teaching myself how to journal. I started praying then. I started meditating, doing all these things that we'd put in the bucket of holistic, mental health care. Just teaching myself as an 11 and 12-year-old. So that's when that began for me. And I carried it through middle school, high school, college, and a lot of the practices I still do today.
So would you say that this experience in the nurse's office with the guidance counselor somehow taught you to not share what you were going through with anyone else, because, or even like your own parents, because
absolutely,
you thought, oh no, someone else is going to tell me to kind of snap out of it?
Yeah, I refer to it as good kid syndrome.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was yelled at when I felt anxious, right? That's how 11-year-old Jesse took that. I was getting in trouble for coming and saying that I needed help with this. So that meant I'm never supposed to show when I'm anxious or I'm going to get in trouble.
So take us, I'm not trying to rush through this important foundation, but so there you were, pubescent, going to yoga, trying to address this self-diagnosed anxiety disorder, and moving through into, I guess, junior high or middle school, and then into high school, and still managing it, right?
Yes.
And then into college.
Yeah. So I followed that academic, intellectualized path into college. I went to Boston College. I majored in psychology.
What a shock.
Right. Was very interested in particularly positive psychology. So in any way that I could get my hands on academics or research about these types of tools that I had been using myself my whole life. Right.
Yeah.
So journaling practices, meditation, sort of alternative therapies, all of these types of things were things that I was interested in. So I didn't ever have a desire to go the clinical psychology route.
Interesting. Yeah.
For me, that was more about mental illness than it was about mental health. So that's when I discovered coaching. So when I was a sophomore at BC and I was majoring in positive psychology, the Institute of Coaching from Harvard Medical School was being founded.
Right.
And I had seen an article about that. And I reached out to the founders and the program director at the time and said, "Can I intern for you?" So they gave me a job interning for them. So I was interning for the next 3 years while I was at BC and helping them set up their evidence-based coaching library, their online library. So I got to kind of be just immersed in all this research about things like happiness and flourishing and all of this type of stuff that I was interested in, but that didn't necessarily have we didn't have a lot of access to those classes at BC or anything like that.
Right.
It was still somewhat of an emerging field.
Oh, I remember it well because that was I remember when it was all established. I was already a coach by then, so I'm a little older than you. So, but yeah, it's kind of exciting to hear about you being involved in the early years of that, because that was really groundbreaking when the Institute of Coaching was set up, and people were really excited about it. They were hungry for that.
Yeah. So I was, there for 3 years at the Institute of Coaching. And then when I graduated from BC, got my first big girl job, right? My first big full-time job. I actually stayed at BC, worked there full-time at their Office of Health Promotion. I was a health coach there. So I was coaching the graduate student population on stress management and time management, prioritization, things like that. And also training and recruiting student health coaches to peer coach other undergraduates.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the Office of Health Promotion didn't exist when I was an undergraduate. So they were just launching June after I graduated in May. They were launching the office in June. And I had a work study job at the counseling services office at BC while I was there, and knew the person who was starting the office. And he gave me the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
So again, on the ground floor of something that was also emerging, and yet I would imagine a lot of evidence-based practices and things that you could bring to that, probably also from your Institute of Coaching experience and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. And it was great to be working alongside a diverse group of professionals in the field to see some other options that I hadn't seen before for my career. Like we had a licensed social worker who is developing a lot of the curriculum for the undergraduates. The director of the office was a certified coach. So just kind of being around these other people who had taken paths that found their way back to sort of this coaching and positive psychology work was interesting for me.
Yeah, I'm curious if that was a little different than being the work that you did early on with the Institute of Coaching, which, if I'm getting this correctly, or what I recall, is that the emphasis for the Institute of Coaching early on was really to provide more of that research foundation for coaching, to really, provide that evidence-based foundation.
Yeah. When I was at the Institute of Coaching, it felt the work that I was doing there was all academic to me. It was all theoretical.
Yeah.
Even though the founders and the people I worked with at the Institute of Coaching were practicing in their fields, right? I wasn't working with them in that capacity.
Okay.
So for me, it was just all theoretical. Which was great as an undergrad. I mean, that was an awesome internship. But then being out in the world and seeing, okay, if you become a licensed social worker and you get through all this theoretical and academic schooling, this is what it can actually look like when you're practicing.
Right.
That was something I hadn't really seen before up until that point.
I see. How long did you work in the health promotion program?
I was there for a little under 2 years at BC. And because it was a new office, part of what I did there was marketing for the office. So recruiting students, running their social media, things like that. And this is where my career trajectory kind of forked off. And I left BC and went into digital health marketing.
Oh, interesting.
So I was doing patient engagement work for different online patient communities, having the patient voice be heard. I was doing that for about 3 years before I started my own practice that I have today.
So what made you decide to make that transition from this still what was a very young office, I guess, at BC to do the digital health marketing? What compelled you in that way?
Yeah. It's a little bit still of that good kid syndrome that I talked about, because I was really good at marketing. So I thought, well, this is where I can grow in my career. I'm really good at this. It comes easy to me. I like learning about it. Let me go in that direction. Because it particularly when you work at a college or in academia, there's not a lot of room for growth. I didn't see how I was going to grow there unless I went to get a master's degree or became, for example, a licensed mental health counselor. So I thought, this is an area I can grow in, and went in the direction of digital marketing, which did help me a lot later on when I started my own practice. But it felt completely unfulfilling to me. It was work that was very easy for me to be good at, but I didn't enjoy it, other than the fact that I enjoyed being good at it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, no, it does. But that wears itself out after a while, right?
Right.
And where did you do that work?
I worked at again, a startup, so usually at the ground floor of things, called Patients Like Me. And that was a community, an online community, like a social network of individuals with all different types of illnesses who had come together to find other people like them who were experiencing the same challenges and connect.
But I can imagine, look, you grew up with a mom who worked in higher ed.
Yeah.
You then went on to school at the same place she worked, which I'm sure she was delighted about.
Yes.
From a tuition point of view. I'm not saying what that would have meant, but who knows? It probably helped.
Yes.
And then you got this, amazing job at the Institute of Coaching, which was also heavily affiliated with an institution of higher education, right? Harvard and McLean's. And then your first job out of school was at BC. So, it was probably great that you went and then after a couple of years, you went and took a job, outside of that arena.
Yes.
And had that experience. I could imagine that would have been part of the decision.
Yeah, it did. It felt like I had been at BC my whole life.
You had been.
I mean, even before I went there as a student, I was coming with my mom to work in the summers, or, it felt like I needed to be somewhere else other than BC for a bit.
Yeah. And to have that exposure of a different kind of workplace too,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so 3 years in, you thought, well, I'm good at this, but it's not floating my boat quite enough.
Yep.
And so then another big decision though, right? I'm curious, how far into that 3 years did you start to think about what was next for you and what that next step would look like if you already knew you were preparing to go out on your own, or whether you were thinking, maybe I'll look for another startup or some other type of organization? What were your thoughts during that time?
Yeah. The big thing that helped me make that decision, I wasn't particularly thinking about going out on my own, although I feel like I was always more entrepreneurial than I realized I was. I mean, I was the kid who made lemonade stands and was always hustling, working a bunch of different jobs. I just always had that mentality, even when I was younger.
Well, I'm going to interrupt for a second. You were pretty entrepreneurial. You got your hands on your brother's AP Psych book, diagnosed yourself, came up with your own approaches that's, to me, that, the way that you chose to even address your own challenges, regardless of what those challenges were, you took on your own challenges for whatever reasons, and said, I'm going to go about this way. You were entrepreneurial at 11. I think that's entrepreneurial.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes. But at this point in my life, I was, 26. And I had just got married. I just bought my first house and was pregnant with my first child. So that was all in the same year.
Wow. Okay.
That was all in the same year. And when I was about 3 months pregnant, I decided I didn't want to go back to working a regular 9 to 5. I wanted to do something that was more meaningful. Plus, I wanted to work for myself. So kind of combined both what I had been recently doing and the coaching work I had done earlier on, and started doing digital marketing work for coaches. So helping them launch their coaching practices, people who are writing books, helping them with their marketing for their books. I started my own little mini agency doing that type of work. And I was in somewhat of a unique position in that I had some content expertise, right? From what I had done in the past, plus the digital marketing experience. So I think that was, and again, my decision at that time was, this just makes sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of what my decision process was like.
Yeah.
I know this is fairly easy for me to do. This would be a good way to start my own business. And that's kind of how I made that decision.
This episode will air in 2024. However, we are speaking just on the very tippy-toe end of 2023. You are really focusing more on your work with clients and your coaching work and your teaching rather than digital marketing at this point.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So take us through that sort of evolution from, well, I can do this, I'm good at it, and I have the context, I understand the coaching, and I can help market these other coaches' books and their work. And I don't know if you were also starting to do some of your own coaching at that point, or whether that came along later. Take us through that evolution.
Yeah. As I continued my own personal growth, I went to get my registered yoga teacher certification.
Ah, okay.
So at the same time that I had this, little marketing coaching agency, I went and did that. And I felt like a student again, but with completely new perspective
Yeah.
at that time. And what I previously would have intellectualized, I was able to feel in my body. And that particular year-long experience really helped me reconnect with my body and with I call it my intuition. You could call it your inner wisdom, your inner voice, whatever you want to call it. But
Sure.
and that sort of opened the door to me doing a lot more personal development work that I then just started sharing with people. So I got my ICF certification from the Newfield Network.
Oh, yeah.
They focus on ontological coaching. So, I got that certification. At the same time, I was doing work at Mass General, and I was able to start a leadership coaching program at Mass General for some of their employees. And then also teach some of their graduate students about coaching as well, and worked with some of the professors to integrate coaching into their curriculum. So I started moving away from the digital marketing through my own personal development, and then started being able to share that and turn that into a career for myself.
So backing up, Newfield Network, I've definitely heard of it and I've heard great things about it. Tell us what ontological coaching is.
Yeah, ontological coaching is, it's kind of similar to whole being coaching.
Okay.
So they look at body, emotions, and language. And they look at coaching through a more somatic lens than a lot of other coaching programs do.
Yep.
And it's funny, even having the knowledge that I did at the time that I went through that program, whenever we went to the body work and the somatic work in that program, I remember thinking to myself, this is silly. I'm never going to use this.
Interesting.
And like still not at the time recognizing how much I was still not wanting to go there, even though it now felt comfortable and I could go there.
Wow.
There was still so much holding me back from even thinking that it was an important element of coaching at the time that I was going through the program. Now, of course, a lot of the work that I do is heavily related to being able to connect in with your body. And it's just so funny that even at that time when I was going through it, I was like, this is silly. Why are we dancing? Why am I trying to feel my heartbeat? Why am
And this was after you had also gotten certified as a yoga instructor.
Yes.
Which is also very focused on a lot of those things as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. And I thank you for being so generous in the way you're sharing your own experience, because my daughter's a certified yoga instructor, and I, learned a lot from her through that process, and having taken yoga classes, knowing that there's a heavy emphasis in yoga around that kind of awareness, and not just physically but emotionally and all of those things. And so I'm thinking it's almost like you had to really have this like pounded into you in some ways for you to really sort of say, hey,
Yep.
There's a reason why you're doing all this, and it's not just silly.
Yeah. The way that I sort of now think about that trajectory is I just kept taking the next right step.
Yeah.
And not knowing necessarily how it connected yet.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm still in that process right now, not knowing how what I'm doing is connecting to the next thing I'm going to do, but I just keep taking the next right step. And in particular, the body work and the personal development work that I've done my whole life, to me, is just an ongoing practice. So when I was in my yoga program, I was practicing remembering what it felt like to be in my body. And I think I was probably still heavily intellectualizing it, but at least I was going through the motion and I was practicing.
Yeah.
And the same in my coaching program. I still believe I was probably intellectualizing. I was thinking, how am I going to use this in my coaching practice?
Right.
What's the practicality of this? Like, how do I market this?
Right.
Still up in my head.
All the hows, right?
Right. Still up in my head with it, but practicing.
Yeah. And then I'm also curious how that translated into how you offered that into a leadership coaching program at MGH, and Mass General Hospital.
Yep.
I say MGH because it rolls right off the tongue here, living in the Boston area. And who you were offering that to there, because there's a number of different, I can imagine different sort of pockets of people at Mass General that you could have been involved with there.
Yeah. So I was working at their Institute for Health Professionals, which is their sort of master's degree and doctoral degree granting arm. So they do, speech language pathology, physical therapy, nursing. I was working there at the time, directly for their COO. And, I told him I was going into a coaching program, and could I develop a coaching program and pilot it with staff? And I created a little business proposal and had a great boss who said, yeah, you can do this.
Wow.
So just piloted this program that at the time I called Better Being. And it was all about your way of being and presence and the way you show up, and was able to work with a bunch of the leadership there through a 6-month coaching engagement. And then after we had that little pilot with some of the professionals at Mass Gen, I was able to start working with some of the professors at the Institute of Health Professions to start to integrate coaching into their curriculum. And now I go back every year and I do I work with their doctoral nursing students on self-trust and presence. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And as you've been talking about each of these steps that you've taken, I hear the theme of self-trust as you go from step to step to step, that, even though you very much own the way in which you can say, well, I think I was still kind of intellectualizing this and that as I went through. There's an element of like self-trust that I'm going to grow through all of this, and I'm going to keep discovering as I keep going forward. I don't need to push any one agenda here. I can just keep going through, and it's all unfolding as you keep going.
Yes. Yeah. And, when I think about trust and self-trust in general, I think about the 3 components of trust. And this comes out of the Newfield network, and I apply it to self-trust as well, but reliability, competence, and sincerity. And reliability being, do I keep promises to myself? Competence being what we tend to think about with self-trust, probably most prominently. Do I believe in myself? Do I think I can do this? And sincerity is that area that I really focus on a lot with my clients. And what I think you're picking up on in my journey as well was going from, masking as a child and having a facade of keeping it all together. And even the intellectualizing was for me a form of numbing or a form of protection. And this whole journey just being one of growing in sincerity. And as I got to be more honest with myself, and then put into practice being more honest in front of the world and the way that I show up and my presence, that gets reinforced. And then it's easier to just be that way all the time. And that's where I think I started to grow quite a bit, particularly in the last few years.
And I would say, and tell me what you think about this. I'll just throw this out at you, that this notion about sincerity, it's not that the opposite of sincerity here is insincerity. That everything you did up to that point was from a place of trusting where you needed to be at that point in time, I would say. And that thread of sincerity has grown and grown and grown as an expression of how your intellectual self allowed yourself to connect further and integrate further with your physical self and all the other parts of yourself to feel more integrated as in a way. But it wasn't for lack of sincerity.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think insincerity would be the opposite.
Yeah.
For me, it was not knowing who I was because I couldn't connect with who I was because I was so well practiced at being who the world wanted me to be.
That good kid syndrome thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the more I was able to start to connect with my body, with my intuition, and be able to get to know myself again, then I could start to align that with how I was showing up in the world. And it's so much easier.
Well, I think that's the part, right, where you just feel almost more at peace with yourself.
Yes.
As you go forward. And as a parent, it allows you to show up differently as well.
Yes. Yeah. So now I have 3 children now, 7, 6, and 4 at this time. And, my oldest son, Jacob, who's 7 now, I noticed him experiencing a lot of anxiety when he went to school. And, it broke my heart one day when he came home and said, I held it together today. And you're just thinking, this 7-year-old shouldn't have to hold it together. But I get to parent him and approach this situation in a very different way than it was, approached for me when I was a kid. And because of the self-trust work that I've done, because of the personal development work that I've done, it's not intellectualized. It's actually who I am and my way of being and my presence and showing up with him that I can help him regulate, that I can teach him how to regulate and not from here's the theory of how you regulate, but like with a resonance in being with somebody else.
Yeah. And help him to find his own way.
Yes.
Whatever works best for him too. It's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And tell us about Gemini leadership in general and the soul session method.
Yeah. So the work that I do now in my practice and through Gemini leadership, I do a lot of individual coaching. I work with a lot of leaders. But I also teach self-coaching. So I'm going to teach you how to fish, right?
I love it.
I mean, as you heard from my story, a lot of this was, because I had to, but it's also something that I'm very passionate about, is being able to coach yourself at any time, in any moment, through any decision-making process. You don't need to always pay a coach for that. You can be your own most trusted advisor. It's just a matter of being able to tap into that voice or tap into your intuition so that becomes louder than your inner critic. and you're able to hear that. For most people, that voice is a whisper, if they can even hear it.
Right.
And even when they do hear it, they don't trust it.
No, they don't.
They don't trust it. They think it's so hard to distinguish it from the inner critic that they don't trust it. So that's what my coaching work is focused around, is being able to identify that voice, make it louder than the inner critic, and then probably the bulk of the work, being able to then trust that voice, go out, practice it, have it be reinforced so that you continue to build that trust.
Right.
And in teaching people how to do this, and the method that I use is metaphor coaching.
Ooh, I love that.
So this is when a third party is brought into the coaching relationship. Sometimes it's a box of trinkets. It can be anything, but you bring this other party into the energetic field of a coaching session or a coaching engagement.
Yeah.
And for me, the tool that I use is tarot cards.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So nothing witchy or particularly mystical about it, but for me, it's a tool of metaphor coaching because they're so rich in symbolism, and people can see a card and intuit a meaning, and it's really an accessible tool for self-coaching. It's fairly easy to get a deck of cards and have it at home and develop your own relationship, and it becomes a coach for you in your pocket anytime that you want to make a decision, or you need some advice, or you need some guidance. For me, it's a way to tap into that intuition, to tap into that inner wisdom in a conversation, the same way you would with a coach. Now the cards can act as your coach.
Wow. That's amazing. How did you decide to use tarot cards as that tool?
I had started using them personally about 5 years ago. For me, it replaced journaling as a self-coaching practice.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So for a very long time, ever since I was little, I was journaling. And then I started using tarot as a replacement for that because it was more efficient for me. It was, it felt like more of a conversation. It felt like I could do it faster. So I started using it myself. And then every once in a while, when I was in a coaching engagement, we'd somehow get on that topic, or somebody would see crystals behind me and be like, hey, what's that? And we'd get talking about that type of stuff. And then I'd bring it into a coaching session. And that became very popular. And as I started sharing about how I use tarot for myself and for my own decision-making and my own building of self-trust, I started getting a lot more inquiries around that, and ended up revolving my whole practice around tarot-based coaching, and then teaching people how to use tarot to become better decision makers and build self-trust.
What is, and the soul session method, is that something separate?
Integrated into that. Yeah. So this conversation that I'm talking about with the cards. Well, it came naturally for me, probably because I'm a coach, to be able to be in conversation that way. I know it doesn't come naturally for everybody. So I developed a framework that both I use with clients and I teach clients how to use. That's called a soul session, which is just a conversation with yourself, with your intuition. You could say it's a conversation with your soul, but it's 5 questions or prompts that you can use when you're using the cards to be able to follow the arc of a coaching conversation. If anyone in your audience is a coach and I describe what these 5 questions are of a soul session, it will feel familiar because it goes through clarifying the topic, then digging a little bit deeper. Why is this important? What does this mean to you? Getting a little even more clear on the topic, then exploring it a bit. And the question that I use at that time is, what am I not seeing? and pulling a card and seeing what that prompts. So the same way a coach might provide a reflection at that point in a conversation or try to shift a perspective, the cards can prompt that same shift in perspective. Then going into, what do I need to adjust? So how do I need to shift things, and seeing what that prompts, and then going into the next right action. So what's the next right step for me to take here? And this series of 5 questions takes less than 7 minutes when you're using tarot cards, and you can use it for anything that you would bring to a coaching session. So everywhere from an issue with a relationship to a leadership issue to something with your family to health issues. So sort of spanning all the realms of personal and professional development. And for me, this was, I had a colleague ask me before about my presence or about my way of being. They said, but how did you get there? How did you do it? And my brain goes to sort of theory and intellectual and writing a book and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, really, the how, like the day-to-day how, is I use tarot cards. That's the day-to-day how. So then I started, developing a way with Intuition Academy, which is what I run through Gemini Leadership. It's a self-coaching program. Started being able to teach people the actual how, right? Not the theory, not a book about it, not any of this, but like, how do I do this day to day? How do I start to trust myself? How do I make better decisions? How do I start to allow the voice of my intuition to be louder than the voice of my inner critic? For me, that's the practice.
I can't imagine. I can't think of anyone who couldn't benefit from all of this. So what is the best way for someone to learn more or to connect with you? Where should they go?
The best way to connect with me is to go to 7minutetarot.com.
Okay. Spelled out?
Yes, you can do either the number 7 or spelled out 7. Both of them work. 7minutetarot.com. I have a free masterclass on there. It's about 45 minutes long, and it goes through a lot more detail than we got to go through today on how to develop this 7-minute tarot practice to become a better decision maker, and how you can develop a relationship with the cards. I lay out my whole framework for understanding the cards and creating your own definitions of what they mean for you, and being able to be in conversation with your intuition. So that's the best way to sort of learn more about what I do and connect with me.
Well, thank you. That is very generous. And I almost feel a little silly asking this question, not because I believe it's a silly question, but I feel like you've already given us so many approaches for this question. But I'll still ask you anyway, because I always ask people. So if you were to give someone a key piece of advice or guidance around how they might approach their next step if they were looking to make a change or a transition in their professional or personal lives, because some people listening to this are thinking about perhaps their third act or, full retirement, whatever they're deciding, what would be a key piece of advice you might give them about how to go about that?
Finding some way that resonates with them to hear the voice of their inner wisdom louder. So for me, that's tarot cards, but it could be journaling, it could be meditating, it could be yoga, whatever that thing is that allows you to connect with that voice and make it be louder than the inner critic. And using that information as your most trusted source of wisdom, rather than external sources of validation or anybody else's opinion about what you should be doing. Focusing on that inner wisdom above all else.
Well, that is the best way to close out an episode of Work from the Inside Out, because that's exactly the thematically what I'm always telling people. Don't listen to anyone else but yourself, right? It is all about the inside. This has been amazing, Jesse. Thank you so much for being here. I love hearing about your story and how things have evolved. I know they're going to continue to. I appreciate your generosity, and I really, really want to encourage people to go to 7minutetarot.com. And there's going to be so many other links in the show notes so people can hear your TEDx talk and look at all the other amazing work that you've done. I know people will benefit greatly from it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Jesse Janelle. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 241. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. If you were feeling it, please help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button right there. Leave an honest rating and brief review. I've provided step-by-step instructions to make it easy for you. The more ratings and reviews the podcast gets, the more exposure it gets, and the more people I can help. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or you can order it through your local public library. You can also help sustain the podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.